Welcome back into the Long Shot Podcast. You know, normally we do a nice introduction for our guests, but this man needs no introduction. I'm sure many of you listeners know him quite well from his podcast, Old Man and the Three. Just putting a nice bow on a 15-year NBA career. JJ, welcome to the Long Shot Podcast. It is a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you guys for having me. Thank you for finally inviting me on the show. This has been a long time coming. I felt like when we started having these discussions with you about doing the Long Shot Pod last fall that I would get an early invite. I consider myself to be a long shot myself, but apparently it took 30-some episodes to get an invite. So thanks, guys.
It's a tough ticket. I will say, you know, we're very, very strategic with who we choose to come on. And just looking at your resume, you know, Mr. Basketball in Virginia, McDonald's All-American. I mean, you've been a legend from the jump. I don't know if you fit the long shot criteria, if we're being honest.
Yeah. All right. Well, in my own mind, I've been an underdog. All right. In my own mind.
No, you absolutely have.
Keep going, though. Keep going with the resume. Keep going.
All right. No, National College Player of the Year. Was that 2-time or just once?
No, it was twice. All right.
Of course. 3-time All-American?
Yeah, 3-time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And do you want to finich the rest, or do you want me to?
No, you're good, man. I mean, you could include some NBA stuff, but like, you know, nothing as sexy as like, you know, that college stuff. But whatever.
There's plenty of NBA stuff to include, but obviously the recent news being your retirement. First off, we had like a little homage to you in our episode last week. I don't know if you tuned in. Maybe you did.
I watched it on YouTube.
Fantastic.
Very kind. Very kind.
I appreciate that. But we just enjoyed kicking around, you know, some of our favorite moments of you. I imagine when you make a decision like that, and obviously so much went into making that decision, but there must be like a kind of a series of flashbacks where you look back throughout your career. And I'm curious are there maybe moments that stick out when you look back that your typical fan might not think of as maybe, you know, a seminal moment, but for you, for whatever reason, it's near and dear to your heart?
Sure. First of all, you know, in terms of the reflection's been happening for a while. You know, I was hurt a good portion of the season. And as I said in that video I released on the day I retired, you know, I knew last fall that I wanted this to be my last season. And so I've spent a lot of time sort of reflecting on my career. And someone asked me fairly recently, a few weeks ago, as I was sort of finalizing this decision, they're like, what are you going to miss the most, or what are you going to be most proud of in your career? And it's funny, Duncan and Davis, like it's not anything really on the court. You know, what I think I'm going to miss is teammates and coaches and staff, collaboration. You know, if you had asked me, what are the 3 things that, like, what was the juice for you? What was the juice? And like, certainly shooting a basketball, that's the drug, right? We get a little dopamine hit every time we see the ball go through the net. Like, that's exciting. But the juice for me was 3 things. It was performance. There's nothing like playing in front of 20,000 people, especially on the road, or at home if you have a good home crowd. But
yeah,
the performance part, the competition, like competing. Like, there's nothing above the NBA, right? You know, it's competing, like the competition. You told that story on the pod about me in a meaningless game in March or April, and I'm 6 minutes into the game, and I've cursed out 3 players. I'm screaming at referees, and I'm all over the place. I'm running around. I'm sprinting off screens. Like, I loved competing. Like, that to me was as important as anything else. And I could say, like, in my career, like, I don't remember ever saying to myself, I'm going to take tonight off. Like, whatever I had that night, I gave. There wasn't times, maybe I didn't shoot the ball well. Maybe I made some mistakes defensively. But, like, you know, some nights you have it, some nights you don't. But whatever I had that night, I gave that night. And then the third part is what I started this little rant with, and that is collaboration. And that is, camaraderie, like being a part of a team. And so those moments you talk about, like, yeah, like I'll look back on YouTube probably once or twice a year and be like, oh, I did that. I remember that game. Yeah, I remember that shot. I remember that stuff. But it's like those moments in a locker room, those moments on a practice court, those moments on a team bus, on a team plane. The feeling, I bring it to Miami Heat, like a great memory in my mind is Game 4 against the Miami Heat in 2018. We come back, we win. I hit a couple shots down the stretch. But the moment I remember is walking off the court after the final buzzer and getting back in that locker room and sharing that feeling with the 30 or 40 people you just went into battle. Like that to me was what I'll miss the most. And I don't know if you can ever replace that. There's really nothing like playing a team sport at the highest level.
To say that was a rant would be doing yourself a serious disservice. That was a beautifully said soliloquy is what I want to call that. I want to unpack the second thing that you said, the competitive spirit, the competitiveness night in, night out. You played 15 years. You have seen different versions of the NBA game. And when I talk to older players, and not so much you, actually maybe even players that are a little bit older than you, there's this classic, like, and this isn't demeaning, but like this old head perspective of, back when we played, guys were going at each other's necks. Back when we played, the personal matchup is what mattered most. I'm curious for you that recently, have you seen the league kind of stray away from that competitiveness? I think an example of it being somebody like Jimmy Butler, where he has run-ins in with certain organizations. Is that kind of like are you guys a little bit of a lost breed, would you say, or is that not fair to say?
I'm not going to speak negatively about any generation of player. And I'll actually say, I've mentioned this a few times, but the guys coming into the league now are so much more skilled than the guys coming into the league when I first came in 2006. The resources that guys have in terms of skill work and personal coaches and personal trainers, that's only going to get better and better and better. We think about Overtime Elite or the G League Elite. The personal training and the attention to detail, the footwork that guys have. I watched a clip on Instagram the other day of this 11-year-old with like James Harden footwork. I'm like, what is going on here? To answer your question about the competitive spirit, I think some of it, honestly, is social media. What is, in my mind, someone being competitive can be misconstrued in another way. I honestly think guys are competitive on the court, but I do think some of the stuff I saw early in my career, fights, I got in three or four fights in practice. Like Hedo Turkle used to pick on me, and we'd go at each other, and then like I got in a scuffle with Carlos Arroyo. I got in a scuffle with Brian Cook. Like you don't hear about that anymore. The Jimmy Butler Minnesota Timberwolves practice. The fact that leaked that fucking day, come on, man. Like that shouldn't happen. So I think some of it is like, I'm just going to like do my skill work and I'm going to go try to be the best version of myself and I'm going to try to win. But there is some like hesitancy to completely push yourself all in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And I appreciate you saying that because I do think that all I know is within the last 3 years. I'm going into year 4. So all I know is within the last 3 years. But I do feel like once I step onto the court, the competitive back and forth and that kind of dynamic still very much exists. Granted, I have nothing to compare to. But I was just curious of your perspective on that. I want to shift it back to more about you because this is all about you. You know, this is your interview here.
Yes.
How do you, we've touched on this, I don't want to say maniacal, but like this ability to go to this dark place to compete. How do you navigate that and still be a sensible, fantastic father, husband, friend? How do you go about doing that? Because I think you do it do it beautifully, honestly.
Since you've known me, I've done it pretty well. Kids change you. I probably wasn't the best version of myself prior to becoming a father, because that maniacal pursuit takes its toll, and it does. And I'm not just saying it takes its toll on me, and it certainly did, but it takes its toll on the people around you, your wife, your friends. When you're so focused on a singular thing, it can wear on the other people around you. I think that's part of the reason that I knew it was time, because like this scale, this balance scale, if it started up here, as I started having kids, like this side started weighing more than this side. And then all of a sudden I'm 37, I'm 15 years in, my body's failing. I still love to compete. I still love to play, but it's like, I don't know that I can still do that approach. And if I do that approach, I can still play. But if I don't do it, and I would rather do this 80% of the time, I'm not going to be very good. And so, like, for me, I had to have that approach. And, I look back at, like, go all the way back 11-year-old AAU days. I was fucking like that. I was a psycho then, so you do it for long enough and it takes its toll. It took its toll on me, and your kids, my kids, have mellowed me out a little bit. And in life, that's a good thing. But between that and father time, maybe that's when I sort of realized, like, oh, I think it's time to hang them up.
As someone who retired from basketball after their sophomore year of college, I feel like I have a lot of things to say here that can be directly relatable to you, JJ, because it's the same thing. The hardest thing is, on a serious note, was defining who you are after basketball. Because, for me, I was only 23 or whatever at the time, but my whole life had been basketball. Your whole life is basketball. But like you said, to have these other things to fall back on, family, these other values, it just, I assume, makes it a lot easier. I think an interesting thing with you is you kind of have the opposite trajectory of Duncan. You were like the villain asshole in college, and now you're like one of the most beloved guys in the league. Everyone loves you. No one has a bad thing to say. Duncan's been like the underdog, like sweetheart as a rookie. So I'm hoping he actually does the opposite and kind of becomes the asshole.
I actually see it though. I think you're spot on. I think that the innocent is me, like, aw shucks guy, Jimmy Neutron or whatever the fuck that cartoon character. Like, I think that was all really cute, but the true Duncan will show himself more and more. Money changes people. That's the thing. Money changes people. By the way, Davis, I just want to say, this is for the YouTube viewers. It's a dope ass bomber you got on. Hey, Old man in the 3 bomber. You guys need we'll get the long shot bomber soon.
Yeah, I rep
long
this
shot
for
bomber
you.
soon. Love it.
I want you both to know that I will continue to be humbled, because now that we have Markieff Morris, my full-time name is Jimmy Neutron, because I've actually recently found out that he was the linchpin behind the whole Jimmy Neutron thing. He was the one, he was pushing it all. He came up to me before a conditioning test and he was like, "Hey, I just want you to know, like, it wasn't Dwight. It was me the whole time. It was me the whole time." Wow. It was an incredible moment. I was like, I was speechless for a second, because like that really took off, and now all I hear is Jimmy Neutron. But anyways, yeah, it was Mark.
How'd you do on your conditioning test? I assume you passed it.
I did.
Congrats, man.
I was well prepared. I appreciate that.
In all your years with the Heat, all 4 of them or 5 of them, however long it is now, 5. Yeah, 5. Year 5. Yeah, because I saw the Instagram post.
Year 4, actually.
Well, technically year 5 though, right?
No, year 4. I had a 2-way year, and then this is my 3rd year. It's all right.
Okay, all right. But have you ever failed it?
I have not. No. I mean, not that we need to like totally. I mean, we can't get into it, but it's basically like, if you train for it and prepare for it, you will pass it.
Right.
The only issues that people run into is if They just try to show up and run it. Then it's really challenging. But
I had this massive wine dinner that I hosted. This is pre-pandemic. This is like 2019 that I invited Jimmy up for. It was like late September. It was like right before I went to New Orleans, and he thought about coming, but then he explained to me that the conditioning test was the following day, and he was like, I don't want to risk it. I don't want to risk it.
Yeah, that would be putting yourself in a tough spot for sure. As well conditioned as Jimmy Butler is, it would have been a challenge.
JJ, I was just going to quickly ask: is the Miami conditioning test like lore in the NBA? Like, are people aware of it? Because within the Heat community, I think it's like this mysterious thing that everyone talks about. It's like part of the Heat culture. You got to pass this conditioning test. Is it common in other places around the league, or is it really like a different bar?
In the NBA, the conditioning tests in general are not that hard, and I've had teams that did conditioning tests. Last year with the Pelicans, we had to do a 3-minute run, basically touch as many lengths of the court as possible in 3 minutes, and based on your position, you had to get a certain amount. I didn't really train for it, I'm going to be honest with you, but I made the test the first time. It was fine.
Nice.
The thing about the Heat conditioning test is there's all this lore about it, and I'm not even sure it's that hard. I think it's part of this Heat culture PR machine that gets churned out year after year. And I fell culprit to aiding and abetting that Heat culture PR machine last fall. I will admit to that.
I was going to say, at one point, Old Man in the Three was just a full-blown Heat podcast.
There were accusations of that, yes.
Yeah, everybody thought that was going to be your off-season move. Find your way to Miami. I wish it happened. Honestly, I really did.
What is the Heat conditioning test?
Oh, he won't say.
I don't know if I think it's a responsibility of mine to continue the smoke and mirrors behind it all. I really do. The only thing I can tell you is it's tough. It's real tough.
It's super tough.
Yeah. Right.
I want to bring it back to OG JJ Redick podcast. I remember listening to a podcast of yours. I was getting on a flight to Ann Arbor, and you were talking about a moment where you were going out to dinner with, I believe it was your wife's family.
Yep.
And the next day you knew you had to guard James Harden. And you kind of talked about this kind of struggle of trying to be present, trying to be a great husband, while also trying to, of course, on the back of your mind always is having to guard James Harden the next night. And just the challenges, I think you highlighted it as like these are some of the challenges that we face as, human beings that are also professional athletes. I'm curious, is that now like somewhat of a burden off your back, that you now feel that's no longer maybe the stress and anxieties that come with playing at a high level and performing at a high level, as wonderful as it is, because like you said, there's nothing like it. Is that something that you feel has been a weight that's lifted?
Definitely. I'll recap the story. Basically, my wife's family was in town. It was a Saturday night. We had a Sunday afternoon. We had like the Sunday afternoon ESPN game against the Rockets. This is when I was playing for the Clippers. We went to this Mexican restaurant in Manhattan Beach. And I thought I was talkative. Apparently I wasn't, because when we got home, my wife was like, what the hell were you, what the hell was going on at dinner? You didn't speak to anybody. You were off in another world. And I said, I've got to guard James Harden tomorrow. That's all I could think about. And when people talk about expectations, I've never felt expectations or pressure from expectations from the outside world, because I was always placing that pressure and those expectations on myself. And the byproduct of that is that you're constantly sort of dealing with performance anxiety. It's a real thing. To not have performance anxiety for the last few months, and certainly for the last week or so, it's been a huge burden. It's been a weight lifted off my shoulder. I felt this incredible sense of freedom on Wednesday. Even though I'd made the decision 10 or 12 days prior, I felt this incredible sense of freedom. And And 100%, it felt like a little bit of a burden. Now, that's not to say I know how I'm wired. I can already feel it coming back. I can already feel that pressure to perform and do something.
In terms of your golf game.
Well, yeah, for sure.
Now you got to break 80.
I've put these goals on myself for golf to get my handicap down and to post certain scores. And no, I think in life, I will always put that pressure on myself. I will always want to be doing something that matters in some way. Maybe not to other people, but I want to be doing something that matters to me, that I can find those three things that we talked about earlier. Like, that is so important to me, to find that competition, to find that aspect of performance, maybe not performing on a stage or performing on a court, but some aspect of performance anxiety and some aspect of collaboration. Those are the three things that matter.
Yeah, I mean, we're joking about golf, but I don't know if either of you caught the Steph Curry, Michael Jordan interview at the Ryder Cup, and Jordan has a great explanation as to why he loves golf, which is basically that it's the ultimate competitive sport because it's you against you. You're playing yourself in a mirror, and we're joking, but it seems like you've really picked up your golf game.
I've gotten better. I've got a ways to go. I'm seeing a coach once a week here in the city. I spent some time with him this summer. He also teaches at the club I have a membership at. So I'm spending some time with him. To Jordan's point, I think you stopped a little bit short of Jordan's. I don't know if I didn't see it, but the full explanation of golf is this. Golf is the ultimate competitive sport because you could play alone and you're competing against yourself in the course. You could play with a buddy with no stakes and you're competing against yourself in the course. You can play a match and you're competing against one other person, two other people with something on the line. And it doesn't have to be a lot, but it could be $5, it could be $20, whatever it is. That's why golf is so great. It's just, it's so competitive. There's in basketball, I could go shoot shots today and then go play pickup. And there's not really going to matter. Like, nothing's going to matter. There's no consequences to it. But in golf, when you see that handicap going up or down, there's consequences to it. That's a number. That's a real number. I walk around with that number, little halo, standing over me. And when I see my friends that golf, I look them all up. Believe me, I save all the golfers I know. I go to their home courses. I type in their GIN number. I find them. I save them. I know exactly what their handicaps are. They got a little number above them too. And I'm competing against them. Believe it.
I think that says more about you than golf, JJ. Hey, I knew this conversation was going to get to golf, so I'm going to derail it. You speaking of performance anxiety and pressure as an NBA player leads me to something I wanted to ask both of you guys about. With Media Day this week, it's like everything I see on social media and Reddit and all this, it's vaccine. It's talks about the vaccine. You guys now, as players, have this added pressure, not just to perform, but to be like advocates and using your platform to speak on pretty serious issues. And I just want your guys' honest opinion. And JJ, now that you're out of it, maybe you can, I don't know, Dunk, I don't know, you're in it. So, you're getting asked these questions. And, JJ, you were too, just a short couple months ago, but it's almost like it's unfair, right? Like, you guys aren't doctors. You guys can obviously use your platform to speak about what you care about, but it's almost like there's an expectation now to go sit at the, post-game conference and talk about how everyone needs to be vaccinated. I just think it's very strange for me to see that all over my timeline.
Whatever the opposite of anti-vax, I'm that person. I am a vax, pro-vax, whatever, to the nth degree. But let's just be honest here. Yesterday was an unmitigated disaster for the NBA. Worst fucking media day in history. So much dumb shit was said. And then you have Karl Anthony Towns giving this impassioned talk about all the shit he's had to deal with from family members, including his mother dying of COVID. Like, what are we even fucking talking about here? It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. I will say this to your question, Davis, is a great question, by the way. Up until 2 years ago, 18 months, March 2019, as an NBA player or a professional athlete, it was your choice to use your platform to speak on something. It was a choice that you could make. You could be quiet. You could be LeBron and talk about a number of issues and use your Twitter and start a school and all that stuff. You do all that stuff. But in the last 18 months, that has shifted. You're obligated now. Unfortunately, but you are. You're obligated. I think at some point in a different sort of environment, maybe when there's not a global pandemic happening, maybe if we get some of this fucking shit with social justice figured out and we can make some progress there and the political turmoil sort of dissipates, maybe we won't be obligated to talk about those things. But for whatever reason, now we are. And it's disappointing. It really is disappointing when guys are not, I would say, guys are not fully informed and then are obligated because they get asked and they have to answer it, and they give bad answers. Bad answers. It's frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, I'll start by reiterating the fact that this is very much a pro-vaccine podcast through and through. So I'll start by saying that. I think, JJ, you made a variety of great points, but I think that the challenges lie within, particularly as we're talking about a vaccine, the misinformation and where people are being selective over what they're tapping meaning into and what they're deciding to be their truth. I think that the Karl Anthony Towns example is really all that needs to be said. And honestly, it was encouraging to hear that. I guess there were a couple players on his team who had some hesitations, but then ultimately, I mean, I would hope, ultimately ended up deciding to go through with getting the vaccine because of his impassioned stance on this issue, which of anybody in the association, he deservedly should have that platform to speak out the way he does. Yeah, I agree with also what you're saying about the obligation. I know that I have certainly felt throughout the time in the bubble, and really since, I've felt a personal obligation, and that's not even talking about the external kind of pressure that you feel naturally, but also just personally, the importance of just kind of drawing a line on where I stand. And for me, a relatively introverted person, I know that might sound weird considering I have a podcast, but I also do very much like to have, compartmentalized parts of my life. It's been a challenge in its own right. But with that being said, I think JJ's absolutely right in that there is an obligation for players, really, whether we like it or not, in a lot of respects.
I think to Davis's original point in question, the obligation is completely unfair.
Yeah,
like we should go back to having a choice, and if we don't want to talk about something, we shouldn't have to talk about something. That's not the world we live in right now. That's not the world. I mean, I'll give you another example. Like, there's been a bunch of stuff that's happened in the last 2 years in the world that I know nothing about. And these things will happen, and you'll see it on social media. Where are all the NBA players speaking out about this? JJ, what do you have to say about this? I'm like, I don't know anything about it. Why would I speak? I'm not an expert in this. I'll go read about it. I'll try to educate myself, but like I don't. It's a weird sort of environment that we're navigating right now, and unfortunately, like we have to do it in real time. For current athletes, they have to do it in real time. But I had to do it for the last 18 months. It's tough.
Davis brought up Media Day. How much do you miss Media Day?
My homeboy that works in the NBA. If I say the team, everybody will know who I'm talking about. But I had about 30 minutes between picking Kai up from school and taking him to tennis yesterday. So I took him to the playground, and he was doing his thing, and I called him and I was like, it's not gonna be a long conversation. I just want to tell you one thing. My takeaway from today is that I'm so fucking glad I'll never have to do another NBA media day again. It's not even just the media stuff, Duncan. It's the production.
Yes.
Please hold up this sign. There's a great photo of me from my second media day ever with the Orlando Magic. I'm laying on my stomach, smiling up at the camera, playing with a toy tank. Why? Why did they make me do that?
No, seriously, why did they? What is that for?
Know. I think it was for some Toys for Tots campaign. But like, again, if you want me to do something for Toys for Tots, that's great. But do I have to do that?
It's actually a great thought that now I wanna ask you. We've talked about what you're gonna miss. Give me some of the things that you're not gonna miss.
Oh yeah, I like that.
All right, I would never disparage any city, but being in a hotel room in Cleveland in February, the night before a game, and just being like completely, not because of Cleveland, but just a random NBA city, just being so isolated and alone, away from my family, I won't miss that. Well, what else? I won't miss training camp. Training camp always felt a little silly to me. Especially if you're on a team with a bunch of guys coming back. I won't miss preseason games. Pretty much after my third or fourth year, preseason games were just it wasn't the same. They weren't as meaningful to me, even though they were competition. Again, I'm contradicting myself a little bit here, but preseason games didn't matter.
Right.
It's the equivalent of playing in an AAU tournament, making it to the Final Four of a tournament, and then making you play for consolation third place. I didn't win the championship. I really have to keep playing. I don't want to do
Third
that.
gets you hardware. Fourth, you don't get any hardware with fourth. Third gets you a bronze.
The AAU tournaments I was going to were not handing out gold, silver, and bronze medals. But
my AAU coach used to call it like when you'd lose in the first pool or whatever, and you got put in like the second bracket. You call it the kiss your sister bracket. Make you feel better. So I'm going through training camp right now. I'm curious. I remember texting you. I think it was last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, and just texting you talking about how I legitimately could not make a shot in training camp, and it was very heartwarming to hear you rebuttal and say that you've never made a shot in any of your training camps, which is definitely hyperbole, but it's funny to me. We had training camp today, the start of it, and just year in and year out, I still go through. You would think maybe this year I feel a little more solidified, whatever, comfort. I still go through this mental struggle of overthinking, analyzing, missing shots in training camp every year. I do it every year.
It's wild. I'm going to give you a piece of advice that I once gave TJ McConnell. And this was in my first training camp with the Sixers. By the way, I went down and played pickup that September. In 3 days of pickup and 5 days of training camp, my shooting percentage was probably 8. Probably 4 for 50. In preseason games, I shot 67% from 3. But I told him this. I said, TJ, he was so upset after the first 2 days of training camp. So upset. So worked up. And I went over to him. I said, TJ, can I tell you something? In 15 years, when somebody pulls up your basketball reference page and they start sorting through your stats, they start looking up, do you think there's going to be any stats in there from your training camp shooting percentages? Why are you getting worked up about your training camp shooting? It's all about a rhythm. You know this, Duncan. It's all I want, because I didn't play a ton of pickup in the offseason. I barely played any pickup at all. I just worked on my game, worked on my body, and worked on my conditioning. Those are the 3 things that I did over and over and over again. And all it was for me was rhythm. The timing of getting off a shot, the timing of coming off screens, the timing of doing a little hand-to-hand combat with your defender. That's all I was worried about. I didn't care about the result. Once the real game started, I certainly cared. But it was just, let's get to that point where I got that rhythm, I got that timing back.
I feel for TJ because in year 13 or whatever it was, 12, when you were telling him that, you were at a significantly different point. You'd already you'd already built up the equity. You'd already proven what you were capable of. At that point, I'm sure TJ was very much like myself when I first, had my first crack at a training camp, where you just live and die by every single shot. So in that story, I actually found myself resonating with TJ's side of it far more than yours.
Oh, for sure. For sure. A little PTSD there, I'm sure, too, from your first couple years in the league where you're trying to find your place, and your career literally could hang in the balance of a make or miss. So I understand that pressure, and I'm not belittling TJ at all. The point was, if you listen to every detail of that story, I said I was empowering TJ because I said in 15 years, when your career's done in 15 years and people look back on your career and they start pulling up your basketball reference page, your shooting stats in training camp are not going to be in there. All the other good shit you do, because you're going to play a long time, TJ, all the other good shit will be in there.
Okay, that I like. Because at that point, if you were telling me that, what would be going through my mind is that you wouldn't be looking at my stats on Basketball Reference. You'd be looking them up on Eurobasket. That's where you would have to go to find my stats if I don't make a fucking shot in training camp. So your little sentiment is irrelevant. Anyways,
no, but he's past that. He's past that point now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Duncan.
He's got equity in the bank.
Dunk, we live in an age where online attacks are a real threat. They're always possible. All over the world, companies are being hit by ransomware attacks, having valuable digital files held hostage. There is nothing worse for a business to go through. I don't know if you know this, but the city of Atlanta was essentially shut down for 5 days back in 2018 due to a ransomware attack.
Davis, sounds like some pretty high level tech. Let me tell you something. You just can't put a price on safety. You can't do it. I've started to use Ignite a little bit, and let me tell you, the user experience is fantastic. Most security software has a horrible user experience, and that is just not at all the case with Ignite. Ignite is a security tool that teams will actually love using. Ransomware detection and mitigation run in the background so your team can work without any sort of disruption.
Behind the scenes, Ignite gives companies with limited IT and security staff the power of much larger teams. You get total visibility, know exactly where key documents are, who has access, automatically detect more than 2,000 ransomware variants, and flag unusual behaviors. Ransomware attacks are inevitable, Dunk, but losing your valuable data is not. The right preparation is everything.
So this is what we're going to do here at The Long Shot. We're going to help you out. You can learn more about how Ignite can protect your business from ransomware, or see why Ignite is rated the #1 for data security by real customers in G2 Crowd. Start your free trial today at egnyte.com. That's egnyte.com. Autumn is in the air, the pumpkins are in the patch, and our friends at Manscaped are here to make sure you don't carve your pants pumpkins when you're grooming, if you know what I'm saying. Make sure you're keeping things fresh this fall with the leaders in male grooming and their brand new 4th generation performance package. Boys, get ready for a cuffing season like no other. Ready to take the leap into fall with Manscaped? Join the 2 million men worldwide using Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with the code LONGSHOT.
Dunk, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think we practice transparency on this podcast. I'm a pretty hairy guy, and I kind of have aversion to body hair, which is not a great combination. So I spend a lot of time on my body hair maintenance, and there is nothing worse than nicking yourself below the belt.
The worst.
It's a buzzkill if you see what I did there.
That's a great pun.
With Manscaped, that is no longer a concern. It's time to bundle up with the Manscaped Performance Package 4.0. Inside this package, you'll find their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose trimmer, which is equally as important, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold all of those goodies. It's a lot of stuff, Dunk.
Now, Dave, that is just the whole kit and caboodle, but it doesn't stop there. The Performance Package 4.0 also includes the Weed Whacker to chop your worst weeds up top in your nose and ear.
Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code LONGSHOT at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code LONGSHOT at manscaped.com. Make your balls a priority this fall. Choose Manscaped. Your balls will thank you.
At World Financial Group, their mission is to help individuals create the life they want to live while protecting their loved ones and planning their financial legacy. Their licensed agents focus not only on helping you get a better understanding of financial concepts and products, but also on creating a strategy to help you get ahead. Interested in connecting with a licensed WFG agent? Go to their website at www.worldfinancialgroup.com/longshot to learn more.
I don't know if we've ever talked, because you've come on the Old Man and the Three a bunch. I don't know if we've really talked about this, but I felt this in year 15, that pressure as a shooter. It's different. It's a different pressure. The expectation of making shots, making open shots. It's a really hard thing to work through. And it's a really hard thing to carry at all times, because every time you step on the court, that's the expectation. And guys like me and you, all we're trying to do is just get a little bit of space. Nobody's giving us space. So we're trying to, a skill is to get that space. We've talked about that a ton on my podcast, just getting that space and then having that sort of clear mind to go make a shot. But that pressure is always there. You carry it with you as a shooter.
Always. And it's actually one of the things that I was going to ask you about. You kind of touched on it, but does that ever go away as you get old? Because it doesn't. Obviously, you kind of said that, but I haven't experienced it diminish at all. If anything, I've actually now, and this is once again an incredible luxury to have, and it's a privilege to have, but now I actually almost experience it even more because of the expectations. But I actually fall in a similar camp to you, or at least I try to, of that my own personal expectations. Like I hold such a high standard of myself that whatever external expectations might come about kind of, pale in comparison to those. But it seems it does not go away. Am I correct in that?
It never goes away. But I'll tell you why it gets a little easier. Because as you go through your career and you build up that equity, those external pressures are always going to be there. Those internal pressures are always going to be there. But as that equity builds, the confidence and ability to bounce back from off shooting nights is so much easier. It's so much easier because you've done it. And it's not about, I know you talk about this all the time as well, and I've talked about this a ton. By the time you get to year 7, year 9, year 10, year 12, your routine and your work is so ingrained that the ability to just sort of shrug off an off shooting night and move on to the next one and just trust that routine and trust that process. I always used to say, I told this to Tim Hardaway, but this was like a big turning point for me in my career. The Clippers was the first time that I really got like shots, and I was taking threes. I was, taking whatever, 5 or 6 a game. And I had this mantra of like 7 for 12. I told Tim Hardaway Jr. this year when I was his teammate. It's like this mantra of 7 for 12, like off shooting night. How do you bounce back from that? All I would think to myself is the next game, if I get those same 12 shots, I'm going to make 7. There's no way I'm not going to make 7. Today was the anomaly. The next game is 7 for 12. And you just move on. And obviously there's games you shoot 5 for 12. There's games you shoot 8. But it's just like, or I think it was 8 for 12. 8 for 12. Sorry, 7's in my mind for some reason. But 8 for 12. 8 for 12. And I think that equity, that confidence, that trust in the routine, that's ultimately how you navigate that pressure of being a shooter.
It's almost eerie to hear you say that, because people ask me a lot, how do you bounce back from slumps or whatever. And so much of this, in fact, like you're a huge mentor to me, so I've taken from you in other ways. But that is almost my exact response every time. In that
8 for 12.
Not the 8 for 12. So not exact response, almost exact. But more so in that the power is the routine, in that you basically get it. So you're doing the same things every single day. So, in any given game, you can't necessarily control that you're going to go 6 for 10. I actually do 10. 6 for 10, 4 for 10, 3 for 10. Like, I always think of it this way too. Like, shooting is so fragile that, if you go 3 for 10, you're terrible. And if you go 4 for 10, that's 40% on high volume. It's, world class or whatever.
And so if you go 5 for 10, that's a great fucking game.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
It's very fragile.
Which is so stupid, because 2 of those misses, probably felt great and just as easily, or maybe should have even gone in. So to get bent out of shape about a 3 for 10 game and then like come back later at night and shoot. And once again, this is me not coming at people who do that. I did that. I used to do that in high school. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just this idea that you now have to supplement your work with additional work, as if the work that you did beforehand wasn't enough, almost. But instead, exactly what you said, I'm hijacking your answer, is just keep the same thing every single day. Have your routine the same as the routine that you do when you wake up in the morning, brush your teeth, whatever it is. And then you throw the 3 for 10s out. That's the anomaly. Not the 5 for 10s, not the 6 for 10s.
The guys that shoot after games, when they have a poor shooting night, keep that same energy when you have a good shooting night. That's all I'll say. I'm agreeing with you completely. Just keep that same energy. Make that your routine. Don't make that your routine. You have to trust the work.
This is going to be a fun episode for people listening and not watching, because they can just close their eyes and guess who's speaking between you two the entire time. It's going to be awesome.
People say Duncan sounds like me. I just don't. I read the YouTube comments sometimes. They're like, Duncan sounds like JJ. I'm like, no, he doesn't.
I do see that too.
He's a masshole. He's a masshole.
I was actually going to go the opposite. I was going to compliment you. I was going to say you're much more eloquent, but then you decided to bring up the masshole comment. I was actually born in Maine, not from Massachusetts, but nonetheless.
It's all the same. It's all the same.
It is kind of all the same. Once you get up there in the Northeast, they're all just kind of jumbled together. That's pretty much all we had for you. Davis, you got anything else?
I mean, I know I'm trying to be conscious of your time, JJ, but I do want to quickly ask you. I posted a video the other day on Instagram of me shooting in Miami's practice gym, and you came at me for it being more of a push shot than a jump shot. And I just wanted to know, are you spending your time overanalyzing people's jumpers a lot, or was that like a singular event?
My Instagram feed has a lot of basketball content on it. I think that's the first time I've commented on someone's jump shot. I would say this too. Duncan, correct me if I'm wrong here. So you really shouldn't shoot at the very top of your jump shot. Now, some guys do. Doesn't always turn out great. Some guys shoot on the way down. That usually turns out horribly. So you're supposed to shoot on the way up, but it's like more towards the top. Davis's shot, it's like almost an exaggeration where he pushes it out there and then jumps. You know what I mean? It's just the timing's just a little off. The mechanics are a little off.
JJ, I just want to say these disparaging words about his jump shot. I mean, this kid had your jersey. This kid had your pictures of you on his wall. I'm broken. You were the end-all, be-all of a young Davis Reid. Hopefully one day I can be like JJ Redick, and here you are. Just
if you want to portray me as an asshole, that's fine. In my defense, when you guys posted Davis's mixtape earlier last season, I gassed that up. I really gassed it. I put like 93 premium gas in that thing. I put it out on social. I made some comments, all very positive. I was very impressed with his game. Extremely gifted alley-oop passer to Willie Cauley-Stein.
That's a fact.
And look, it's like with my golf swing. It's not always about how things look, right?
Thank you.
There's there's no pictures on the box score.
Well, here's the issue.
I don't box score.
I don't really have the results to back it up either. That's the thing. But you'll experience this, JJ, that I don't shoot anymore. Yeah. So you got to understand, after like 10 NBA threes, I can't feel my shoulder. So it's really just taking everything I have to get it to the rim at this point.
I've shot 3 times since the season ended, 2 of which were at the Sag Harbor Park. The other time I was, actually it's 4 times, because 2 times were with my kids at Sag Harbor Park. 1 time I was a little blazed and had a few glasses of wine and played horse against these teenage high school kids. They were awesome. I had to be on my A game. Luckily, I made like 17 out of 20 shots and beat them, but I was down to the last letter. And then the 4th time was recently on a farm, this place called Hank's Farm in Watermill, New York. Take my kids there, apple picking. There's a pumpkin patch. There's apple cider donuts. It's a great time. This year, they put up an outdoor basketball hoop there, and I thought I'd get some shots up. And I hadn't touched a ball in several weeks. And again, this is now 4 months of really not shooting, and I could not make a shot. My first 4 shots hit the backboard. They say it's like riding a bike. Apparently, it's not.
There's so many gems in that. First off, the image of just 2 random high school kids getting pulled up on by JJ Redick and playing horse.
It was at a wine dinner in somebody's backyard. He warned me ahead of time. I kind of forgot, and I smoked a little bit on the golf course. Like, whatever. It was fine. It was fine. I beat them. That's all that matters.
I'm not buying it. I think JJ singled them out. I think the story's getting tweaked.
Anyways, I actually agree with you. Davis does have a little bit of a push shot.
Come on, dude.
To go back on my earlier remarks. Anyways, JJ, we don't want to take too much of your time. We really appreciate you coming on. And we're definitely going to do this again, hopefully in person. We'll really get the dynamic going.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to an Old Man of the 3 long shot pod crossover in-person episode. I do want to say, Your guys' show is awesome. Keep putting out great content. I love listening every week. I watch pretty much every breakout YouTube video as well, because your delivery is fantastic. So thank you guys. Duncan, enjoy the rest of training camp, man. Very excited for you.
No, I'm thrilled. No, we're just over here trying to make our bosses proud. That's pretty much all we're trying to do. So.